Sorry about that. So again, let's start from the beginning. V'biom Simchaskom Moedechem Rosh Chodshechem Muskatem Chatzos Goyim, and the days of rejoicing and your holidays and in your Rosh Chodesh. Ein shall blow with trumpets. V'hoy lachem zikaron fnei Elokechem should be as a remembrance for Hashem your God. Adni Hashem Elokechem, I'm Hashem your God. These are the Gemara. It's brought down the Gemara. Ma'atam Elohim Ani Hashem Elokechem. What does it come to teach you? I am Hashem your God. Zebon Avlachol Makim Shenemar Boy Zechroinus Yi Malchus Imoim. From here we learn out for every other place. Wherever it says about commemorations and remembrances, so there has to be kingship with you. Because over here it says, Zikaron. Zikaron means remembrances. And Ani Hashem Elokechem hu Malchus. And when it says, I am Hashem your God, that is about accepting Hashem's kingship. So therefore, the fact that it says that it should be, this is as a remembrance for Hashem your God, it should be as in other words, by it says I am your God. By it should be a remembrance. We learn out. Wherever it says remembrance is sarachlius gam zechroinus, sarachlius gam malchus. So there also has to be the level, the idea of mentioning kingship, the mentioning the Eibishter as king. From this we derive that in Rosh Hashanah there has to be all the things of kingship, and there has to be the psukim of kingship, and there has to be psukim dealing with remembrances, and the idea of shofars, like it says, uskatem, it says in the pasuk, you shall blow, even though it says blowing your trumpet, but the skatem goes to teach you on shofars. And it says also in the pasuk, v'hoyolachem v'zikaron, it'll be for you a remembrance. So we know from that one has to recite psukim of remembrances. And then Hashem Elokechem, it says in the pasuk, I am Hashem your God. That teaches us that we have to have psukim malchus. These three matters, malchus, zechroinus, v'shofros, psukim that involve Hashem's kingship and psukim that speak about his remembrances, and psukim that involve the idea of shofar, like we know that in Musaf and Rosh Hashanah we have three sets of psukim which are incorporated into three additional brachas during Musaf. We have a set of psukim that are 10 psukim, 3 of Torah, 3 of Nevi'im, 3 of Ksuvim, and then again 1 from Torah, making a total of 10 on the topic of Hashem's kingship. Similarly, 10 psukim on Hashem's remembrances and 10 psukim about shofars, and these are incorporated into the brachas, and we blow shofar along with it, and so on. So he says it's not just in speech. It's not just that we have to recite these 10 psukim in speech. Amiras psukim malchus v'chroinus v'shofar, the reciting of the psukim of kingship and remembrances and blowing about shofar. U'k'maymer, as all the Chazal say, imru lefanei b'Rosh Hashanah malchus v'chroinus v'shofar. Say, speak before me on Rosh Hashanah psukim about malchus, psukim about zechroinus, psukim about shofars. But also it's referring to action. We actually have to do things of malchus, zechroinus, and shofars. Moshe Mavayir Maimer Azal, but Maimer Azal now, like it's explained in the above mentioned Maimer Chazal, that malchus, why are you saying psukim of malchus, of kingship, so that you should make me a king, that you should make me an actual king. So in other words, we are doing an action of melucha. We are coronating and making Hashem as a king. And then the chroinus remembrances, so that your remembrance or your memory should go up. That is an actual thing. We're not just saying it, but it's the effect by Hashem that Hashem should remember us. So again, there's an action involved. It's not just a matter of speech. And the Chazal go on to explain, and how is this done? How is Hashem's kingship comes about, and how is the remembrance of the Eden comes about? B'shofar, through shofar, meaning I date shofar ma'aser poil, through the blowing of the shofar in action. So therefore, it's not just we have to recite these psukim in speech that are involving these three things, but we also have the action of these three things as well. Hine brachos, the idea of the brachos, which is brachos, malchus, zechrois, v'shofris, ma'ak, v'zu. If a person, let's say, has a machzor with torn out pages, let's say, and he only has in his machzor the psukim and the bracha that incorporates the psukim. Psukim you can recite at any time, whatever you want, but he has the brachas that incorporate the psukim, let's say, only of malchios, and not zechroinus and shofros, or only zechroinus, not shofros, or only 2 out of the 3, etc. So it says ma'ak voizu ezu. You cannot say the set of 3 brachas that have all those psukim unless you are able to recite all of the 3 sets of the 3 sets of psukim, the 3 brachas that incorporate these psukim. As opposed to, let's say, if he has a machzor and he's able to say these brachas, but he doesn't have a shofar to listen to, or vice versa. He has a shofar he could hear, but he has no machzor, so he cannot say the brachas. So even though the Gemara linked the 2, but you could do one without the other. So again, the brachas of malchus, achraynis, and shofars and musaf, that set of 3 different brachas that incorporate those psukim, you can't. It's either all or nothing. But you could blow shofar without reciting those brachas, or you could recite those brachas without having a shofar. As opposed to the brachas and the kiyas, they do not block each other. Before the saying the Ramaskal V'yom Semchtechem, it's explained in the Mamorim with Rabbi. In this mime, in the Mamorim with this title of V'yom Semchtechem, why is it that way? Why can one recite the brachas without kiyas or vice versa? The fish brachas with kiyas, because brachas and kiyas are 2 separate things. Brachas as dibur with kiyas ma'isa. Brachas is in speech and kiyas is in action. We need to understand why in Rosh Hashanah do we need both aspects? Especially since the simple meaning of the Chazal. How is it done? It's done through shofar. Pirusha hit kiyas shofar. It means the blowing of the shofar. So that means that the Gemara, in the simple reading of the sense, makes one dependent on the other. That how do you make Hashem? You want Hashem asks us to coronate me over you. Hashem asks me that your memory should come up before me for good. How is that done? Through the blowing of the shofar. So the Gemara does seem to link the 2. Look at the Muchav Gamer, Maimer Azal. This is also obvious, this linkage from what the Chazal say. The mitzvah of the day is through the blowing of the shofar. In other words, different Yom Tovim has their unique mitzvah. Of course, there's a common denominator of all Yom Tovim Shabbosim. You cannot do malachas, and all Yom Tovim Shabbosim you make kiddush, etc., etc. But then there is the unique mitzvah of that particular Yom Tov. Pesach's unique mitzvah is chametz, matzah, etc. And the mitzvah of the day, the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, that's shofar. And later on, he's going to bring that in concerning where that phrase comes from. That phrase comes from concerning, there's a mitzvah, the Beis Hamikdash, they would blow trumpets. On the Karbanos, Shabbosim, Yom Tovim, etc. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, so we're going to have later on that the trumpets finished before. They used to blow the trumpets and the shofar simultaneously, but then the trumpets finished and the shofar continued blowing. And the Chazal say, why is that so? Because mitzvahs hayom b'shofar. In other words, Chatzotzros trumpets are blown all year round on different occasions, but the shofar is unique. That is the mitzvah of the day of Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, we stop the Chatzotzros early, so we should be able to hear and appreciate the shofar on its own. But be that as it may, we're going to discuss that more later on. But here is just using the phrase mitzvahs hayom b'shofar to teach us that a crucial and vital part of Rosh Hashanah is the actual blowing of the shofar. I knew this means Shekol Hinyan Yom Zeh Rosh Hashanah Nimshach Ma'adit Kiyas Shofar. All matters of this day of Rosh Hashanah come down through the blowing of the shofar. We can move and go on Matrikos, Rambam, like it's also understood from what the Rambam wrote. Afal Pishat Kiyas Shofar Barosh Hashanah Gzer Sakosov. Though blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is a decree of the Torah, it just says in the seventh day, the first day of the seventh month, blow shofar. It doesn't link it to any event. It doesn't associate it with Yitzias Mitzrayim or some other thing. No, just out of the blue. No reason. Still in all, the Rambam says, Remez Yesh Boy, it has a hint to it. Kloimar, what is the hint? Uruchulu, awaken from your slumber and do tshuva, etc. It's explained in the Mamorim of our leaders, that the Rambam doesn't just say, do tshuva, wake up. He says, wake up from your sleep and arise from your slumber. A whole lengthy type of descriptions of how the different words for sleeping, different words for waking up. He says from the whole lengthy expression of the Rambam, Mozim, Gimel, and Yanu, the Malchi is a chronis b'shofros. It's hinted these three things of kingship and remembrances and shofros. Moving from the fact that the Rambam, when he's speaking about the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar, uses these three languages that hints at these three things. So it's understood Shekol Gimel Inyanim Elunim Shachim Aidet Tkiyas Shofar, that all of these three things, Malchus, Achronis, and Shofar, come about through the blowing of the Shofar. And now, removing the specifics, the general idea is like the Rambam says, the awakening is about tshuva, like the Rambam writes over there. I knew this means to say that mitzvah that Tkiyas Shofar shayeches laklalos ha'inyan, that the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar is connected to the general idea. The Rosh Hashanah mitzvah yom b'shofar, the mitzvah of the days in Shofar. Because on Rosh Hashanah all matters return to their original state, and since all hamshachas and all the chayos of the world leave the physical world or leave all the spiritual worlds and goes back to their source where they came from earlier, we need to awaken and draw down a new hamshacha from Hashem's very essence, and to draw this down the entire Seder Ishtalshus until the world of action, our world down here. How do we draw down all the hamshachas for the entire Tafshin Pei Gimel, for the entire 5783, from all the way from the highest source, from Hashem's essence? What draws that down? That's through the blowing of the shofar. Shofar roimes le'inyan tshuva canal, because shofar hints at the idea of tshuva, like we mentioned before. What does tshuva have to do with bringing down all the hamshachas from Hashem's essence? So he says, she'ikir tshuva huisachtis amamokim. What's the main idea of tshuva? It's not about sins. It's not about things I did wrong. It's not even about achlotas toivus. Tshuva is about return, reconnecting with the essence. Kadmusam, their earlier state. And this reconnection, there's two ways of this reconnection. Yes, there's in such a way that the reconnection takes place from below to above. And there's a way how the reconnection and the return takes place from above to below. You see this idea of tshuva, this reconnection with the source, is hinted in the pasuk or explained in the pasuk that the spiritual return to the Eibishter that gave it. The Torah Reish Parsha Seinu, Reish Parsha Zu, Parsha Zinu, like it's explained with the Torah at the beginning of this Parsha, Parsha Zinu. Therefore, through that we draw down a new hamshacha from Hashem's very essence, through returning all the way to our source. Through that we draw down from Hashem's source an entirely new and great life force for the entire world. That is the emotional state. What about the physical? Through actually doing the action of blowing shofar in action, we actually draw down to the world of action. Not only do we need to have a physical action, it's insufficient the idea of tshuva spiritually. It's not even sufficient the saying of the psukim. In other words, you have the spiritual tshuva. What could be greater? It's an emotional return. I'm reconnecting with Hashem. You say, no, that's not enough. You gotta say it in speech. You gotta say the psukim of Malchus. You gotta say the psukim of Zechronis. You gotta say the psukim of Shofar. And then you say, no, you gotta bring it down even lower. You need to do an act of blowing it in the physical shofar. And even the blowing, even the blowing or the sound or the voice of the shofar that's supposed to awaken us to tshuva could have been a sound that's coming from a human source. In other words, I could cry out, or internally I could cry out to Hashem, etc. No, that's not enough. You need to have a shofar taken from an animal. Second line in Oizbeis. For this, it's insufficient that there should be the inner voice of a human being. One needs to blow and have the sound of a shofar of an animal, specifically either with an animal called a yal, a certain type of mountain goat, I think, that its horns are straight, which is one opinion in the Gemara that one should have straight horned shofars from a yal, or ram horns that are bent and circular. Like the two opinions that the Gemara brings, and even though we follow the opinion of the curvy type of shofar, but still in all, the Elu Divrei Elokim Chaim, that both these views, that to have a straight shofar is preferable versus having a curvy shofar, and the other view that a curvy shofar is preferable over a straight shofar, both of them are the words of the living God, and both of them have a message for us in our service of Hashem, like we'll soon explain. Even now that we blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah with the curved shofars of male rams, there are still these two ideas of the bent, curvy shofar and the straight shofar in the spiritual service. Because the Gemara speaks about what is the significance of straight shofars and what's the significance of curved shofars. So he says, Shal Yal Pashut, when it's a straight shofar of a Yal, he commented upon it Pashut in his daite Tfeimal. It's brought down the more straight a person's attitude and character traits and emotions are, the better it is. And that's why there's the view that one should have a shofar that's straight. What's explained in Chassidus, the idea of Kamad Pashut in ish daite. The simple meaning is Pashut means simple, straight, without any tricks, etc., etc. Chassidus explains it on a deeper level. So the person needs to undress himself and remove himself of all of his will. So now he explains what it means he has to undress himself. Lahashit is related to the word pashut. What does it mean he's undressing himself? So he's saying, the intention over here does not mean to not goodwill. What does he have to tell us that a person should not have, should remove himself from not good wills? The Indian says, this itself, that a person should not have unwanted and untoward wills. That was already accomplished in the whole month of El prior to Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, what does it mean when we come to Rosh Hashanah and we're supposed to have spiritually the idea of a straight shofar, to have it pashut, the pashut in his diet, Rosh Hashanah, the idea that the person has his mind and his character traits in a straight manner on Rosh Hashanah, called seer, gamet seer the kedusha, that the person should remove himself entirely from any type of form, meaning any type of limitation to who he is, even a form of kedusha which limits him. This is my avoida. My avoida is I do things that have to do more with the kava chesed, or a person says I do things that are more in the kava yira. So he's in kedusha, he's doing holy things, but he's a limited form in what he's doing. So he's saying, because since the light and the energy that we're drawing down on Rosh Hashanah is from a place that is totally beyond any type of paradigm and category of place and any type of category of form. So since it's coming from such a place, therefore I need to come to such a place internally as well. I should not be limited and have a certain form of who I am. Okay, therefore there has to be the avoid of being pure and simple without any type of design and limitations. And through the purity and simplicity of the person, he draws down the purity and straightness of above until the ultimate state of purity and unadulterated and unlimited aspect of Hashem's being. So that is what we accomplish through the straight type of shofars, the internal type of straight shofars. We don't actually blow straight shofars. And then he says further, and the other view, which is about the curvy shofar, he says, the toikin b'shal scharm kfuf, and we actually blow with curved shofrim of male rams, shofars of male rams. The more a person bends his character, meaning the more he makes himself subservient and subjugated, it's better. What is this idea? It's explained in Chassidus. It's the avodah of sublimating himself to the Eibishter, subjugating himself to Hashem's will. Yes, there's an advantage in sublimation and bending himself in iskafia over even the avodah of removing all of his will and all of his definition and how he defines himself and sees himself. This avodah of sublimating himself to the Eibishter's will, that's through the level of a male. Why does it have to do with a male? Like it says, it has to be taken from curved male rams, because as ish darke lichbosh, it is the way of a man to conquer, it says. What does that mean? The way of the man is to conquer. That means that we need to evoke the male within us to conquer and overcome our nefesh bahamis, to subjugate and sublimate those things within us that are not befitting, etc. So these are the two ideas that are hinted in the physical design of the shofar that we're supposed to bring down here into the physical world down here, not just to have the tshuva in our heart, and not just to have the reciting of the psukim, and not just to have the pure voice and sound of the shofar, but also to come down in a physical action of blowing a shofar of a physical animal. Look,